RotoGrinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blender at Blender HD, if you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Friday, June 30th, and you know what we do on Fridays. We fight. We talk about the fights. We talk about the upcoming MMA slate, the UFC Vegas 76, I think I'm right. Vegas 76 is an Apex card. 4 p.m. Eastern lock tomorrow. 12-fight card. Hopefully all the fights are still on. None has been canceled. We still got the weigh-ins today. We'll see, but 12 is on the smaller side. It's not the smallest, but I don't think the slate is. I think the slate, this is more of a leverage slate than a building a weird combo type of slate. We'll take a look at it. And as always, you want to get a breakdown of all the fights, the actual fight dynamics, how the fighters fight. We got that for RotoGrinders premium subscribers. Just click on that button, click on that link in the description, get $10 off. You get the fight breakdowns, you get the Ground and Pound podcast, you get the expert survey, Squirrel Patrol around giving his thoughts. You got the projections that update every day, sometimes twice a day. So check that out. You can build all your lineups in Lineup HQ. RotoGrinders Premium. Join me in my Blender's Game Theory channel if you'd like. I do coaching calls and answer any questions you have. That's typically where you find me if you want to talk strategy. But before we get into it, obviously hit that thumbs up button. Give me those thummy thumbs. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Good morning to the people in the chat. Got some Wataz. Yeah, of course, the early birds. DFIC, Daniel Hutchings, David Porter. Got a chance takedown in the showdown in Maine PGA. He's a lot of letters, right? SD, PGA, SB. Well, hopefully that's good news. Hopefully it's good news. Let's make some money, right? Don't dupe me, though. Don't dupe me in tomorrow's UFC slate. Remember, 4 p.m. Eastern lock. Me and Mike Brown, H3 Buddha, will have crunch time a half an hour before lock, so that'll be 3:30 Eastern tomorrow. That's after I build some lineups. I don't know how many lineups I'm going to be playing on this card. When we look at the contextual variables of the slate, right? If we're playing large field GPPs, especially, typically large field GPPs, you're going to pretty much need the nuts to win, right? And it's practically all the money's at top, right? So you want to have the nut lineup with as little duplication as possible. That's your aim in large field GPPs. So what does that nut lineup more or less probably look like, right? That's what we want with the two main contextual variables that we look at for a UFC MMA card. The two contextual variables: size of the slate, spread of the fights. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my my odd sheet here that I got. Obviously not all filled out yet. These are odds from not the most updated odds. This is from 2 days ago, but it's close, right? This is like kind of a first look. And we first look at the how many fights? 12 fights. Okay. The smaller the card, the more we lean towards the side of win equity, especially for the underdogs. The larger the card, we lean more towards ceiling outcomes, right? Obviously, we'd love ceiling outcomes all the time, right? Right? We'd love to have, our $7,400 fighter scoring 120 points. We'd love that, right? But on smaller cards, which means there's less options, it becomes more and more likely that, an underdog that scores 80 points can make the optimal lineup, right? As opposed to a 15-fight card. There's just more fights on the slate, more opportunities for other people to outscore them. So on a smaller, I would say this is a mid, for recent memory, this is like a normal slate, 12 fights, but I would still consider it on the slightly smaller side. So with some of these underdogs, win equity, we take a look at a Yana Santos or Ariana Lipski, a Luana Carolina. Pretty much the women's fights, very, very poor inside the distance lines, right? Plus 700 for Santos, plus 800 for Lipski, plus 900 for Luana Carolina. But, their win odds are like 41%, 34%, 35%, like not awful for their prices. So even though these fighters may not, have the greatest of chances of putting up 100 plus points on a slate like this, their win equity is a little bit more valuable. If this was a 15 fight card, I would have no problem, not playing Luana Carolina. But I have really no problem playing Ariana Lipski, right? Santos has maybe a slightly better path to a finish with, like armbar from guard, something like that. There may be more wrestling in that matchup. But for the most part, I don't mind win equity. I don't mind sprinkling these fighters in because on this slate, especially when we get to the second contextual variable, it's quite possible that we don't see many underdogs win, because the second contextual variable is the spreads of the fights. Okay, now when the spreads of the fights are very close, we have 9K fighters that are still only a 2-1 favorite, a $9,200, $9,400 fighter. That means that, we can see a lot more underdogs win because the spreads are closer, which means that the nut lineup could leave more and more salary on the table. And obviously, a lot of people like spending most of their salary. So as you spend more salary, the duplication factor goes up. As you spend less salary, the duplication factor goes down. So in slates where there are very close fights across the board, a lineup that is like 48-8 doesn't have that dramatically worse win probability than a 50K lineup, right? This isn't one of those slates, because on this slate, we got Joe Anderson Brito is a minus 1,400 favorite at 9,600. Garam Kutadaladze is minus 700 favorite at 9,400. And then we got Ismail Bonfim. He's minus 350 at 9,200. And then we got, Morales, Petrovic, Gatto, and Ferreira, who are all, over 2-1 favorites. And then we still got like Fakhretdinov, who's about a 2-1 favorite. So the spreads of the fights are fairly wide. The closest fights are like strict the main event, the Romanov Ivanov fight, and the Ismagulov Dawson fight. Those more of the pick'em types. And because of the spreads of the fights are much wider on this slate, I mean, it's more likely that more favorites win than underdogs, which means that the lineup that is the nuts is going to be closer and closer to 50K. So now that's the worst of both worlds, right? It's a smaller slate. You're prioritizing win equity more than ceiling a little bit. And the nut lineup is more likely to be 49.5, 49.7, 50K, which then you run into duplication problems. Okay? So it's going to be much harder to find lineups that have enough win probability, ceiling probability, and under 5, duplicates in large field GPPs. So, and if you find, a lineup that going to be lineups that are duplicated 25, 30 times, 40 times, 50 times, you want to avoid those lineups. But we also have several high leverage opportunities, both in specific fights as well as in construction, because we have very condensed ownership. Because some of these ITD lines for their price are nuts, right? First off, Joe Anderson Brito, most expensive fighter, 9,600. So a lot of times we go, okay, 9,600, sure, yeah, he's a 93% win probability, right? But how many points does he have to put up to be in the optimal lineup? I mean, like 100 may not even do, right? 110 may not even do. Well, this dude is minus 475 inside the distance. This dude is minus 225 in the first round. That's a 69% implied probability of that. Okay? He's not only a good striker, but he wins more of his fights by submission than by knockout. So this guy has wrestling also. He's facing a fighter that, essentially shouldn't be there. Weston Wilson, it's basically a warm body, right? There are other regional fighters that are way more qualified for this opportunity, but this seems like a showcase fight, right? Weston Wilson's plus 800 money line, plus 1,200 inside the distance. I guess he could land a lucky strike, I guess. So it looks very, very likely. Joe Anderson Burrito's chances of putting up 100-plus points is extremely high. I have him at around 58% ownership at 9,600. Now, obviously, the leverage opportunities, you play Weston Wilson at 3 to 6% owned. I don't know what I'm not I'm not sure if that's even the best route. I mean, there is a leverage opportunity there, but I think there are in the closer fights, there are better leverage opportunities because we have another very, very high owned fighter that's going to be Bruno Ferreira at 8,400. And it primarily comes to pricing. So when the odds came out, obviously the line was closer. He's now a minus 220 favorite, which means if we reprice this, he wouldn't be 8,400. He'd be 8,800. That's what it looks like. 8,800 or 8,900. But his inside the distance line is minus 170. His first round odds are plus 110. That's a 63% implied probability inside the distance and 48% implied probability in the first round. And he's 8,400. Typically, we don't see those numbers on anything other than 9K fighters. Okay? His opponent is Nursultan Razibiov, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, who's making his UFC debut. More of a wrestler, even though Bruno Ferreira could wrestle also. Plus 260 inside the distance, plus 185, on the money line. This is a 2-to-1, from a money line perspective. This is, the Ferreira is a 2-to-1 favorite, has a much better inside the distance line. But I have Bruno Ferreira as the highest owned fighter on the slate, even above Joe Anderson Burrito at those numbers. And Razibiov at a quarter of that or a third of that, somewhere in the the 14-ish% range. Based on those numbers, I mean, really, the ownership difference shouldn't be that dramatic. Ferreira should be very high owned. I think it's more likely that Ferreira should be more like 45% owned and Razibiev be 24% owned. But that dynamic is kind of out of whack. And because it's a closer fight, I think I'm much more likely to get leverage in that spot than play Weston Wilson against Joe Anderson Burrito. But then once you start getting into, I want to play Ferreira and Burrito together. Well, now you're playing two nearly 60% fighters together. You're really reducing the amount of combinations that are available that will be less duplicated. And then you have the main event, Strickland versus Magomedov. That's also going to be high owned. It's a 5-round fight in the mid-range, which makes it a little bit easier to make the optimal lineup. It should be a volume, right? I think Strickland is more of a volume striker. Magomedov has a little bit more finishing upside. But I have Strickland at 36% owned and Magomedov at 46% owned. So imagine building that lineup. I mean, imagine building a Burrito, Ferreira, Magomedov lineup. You got 3 spots left and you're sharing points with a third, 35% of the field. Right? You got remaining average is 8,100. I mean, if you go from there, if you play a Romanov, in this fight, now you got 8,000. Maybe play Max Griffin against Morales, and then you play Fakhretdinov against Lee. 242% total ownership. You may look at this and go, "Oh, this looks like a great lineup." It's yeah, good luck being duplicated 88 times. These are the types of lineups that you should be avoiding in large field GPPs. If you want to, in lineup HQ, if you want to even go with, if you want to go with a Burrito, Ferreira, Strickland, Magomedov, so both main event fighters, Burrito, Ferreira, main event, and go max 1, I think you could accomplish a lot more. I think there are going to be some lineups that have 2 that you'd be fine. Right, if you're going to play someone like Ivanov or Ismagulov, or some of these low owned guys, if you're going to play Elvis Oliveira against Kutaladze, which I don't necessarily think is the greatest of ideas either, or like a Lipski, like a 10% owned Lipski, right? Maybe you could get away with 2 of them. I would definitely avoid putting all 3. Brito, Ferreira, and a main event fighter. Like, to me, that's you got 3 spots left, and how many combos are left of that? There's, in a large field with 30,000 entries, I wouldn't. I am more likely, because I have no mind taking risk of doing Brito, Ferreira, main event fighter, max 1, than going from there. That's me, and I'm much more likely, just based on the odds, to play Brito than Ferreira. Then Brito over Strickland, over Magomedov, over Ferreira. Only because at minus 1,400 money line, minus 475 inside the distance, like this is slaughter. This is slaughter range. Like Brito could put up 148 points. I mean, like this is like he can put up so many points that I'll just take him. I'll just take him at that point. I'll find different ways to get different. Some people may go, well, instead of playing Brito, I'm going to play Kutaladze, or I'm going to play Bonfim or something like that. Yes, you could do that as well. That's where you get leverage with construction. So I think there's leverage opportunities with, well, if you don't play Brito, you have a lot more paths of constructions than you do other types of lineups. So that's why think of it in 2 different buckets. So the first bucket we just talked about of like, well, I'm going to play Brito, but I'm not going to play a main event fighter. I'm not going to play Ferreira. So in that type of lineup, I'm more likely to play Ruzaboev. I'm more likely to play like Gatto, Rosa. I could fit in Ismail Bonfim and play like an up and down type of lineup, right? Maybe play Blagoy Ivanov against Romanov, who should be popular. Like the amount that you could pivot is much lower because you're using a $9,600 fighter. So you're getting kind of limited in the options that you have while not playing Ferreira and not playing a main event fighter. But if you don't play Brito, then you have much more opportunities with construction. Because then you could essentially avoid the 9K range. You could play lineups that like just you can play a lineup like this without Brito in it. Let's say you play Bonfim as your highest salary lineup. Maybe play Bonfim. You play Ferreira in this lineup. Play like Magomedov. Like you could even play main event fighter in this type of lineup. You play like Luana Carolina. You play Melissa Gatto and Carol Rosa. You play 3 women, right? You're still playing Ferrari. You're still playing Magomedov. Much lower ownership, 190. It's still high because you're still pairing Ferreira and Magomedov together. But even if you don't do that, let's say you don't play a main event fighter at all and you just play Ferreira as well. I mean, you could play a Ivana Petrovic. You could play this type of Bonfim, Petrovic, Ferreira. Maybe you play a Max Griffin against Morales. Maybe you play a Kevin Lee against Fakhretdinov, right? You could do something like this. You could build a lineup that Bonfim, Ferreira, Petrovic, Griffin, Lee, Gatto. I mean, you're reducing ownership dramatically just with construction. Like you're not playing anyone that low owned, but the combination of these is going to be much less duplicated. And then obviously there are lineups that don't have Brito, don't have Ferreira, and don't have a main event fighter. I mean, that would be the most unique type of construction. So that's what you should be thinking about going into this. It's like what types of constructions, what types of lineups that still have a high win probability, chances of winning first place. Like this isn't the type of slate with these spreads where you should be playing many lineups that leave like 3,000 on the table. Yet you'll see people do it. But it's also not the type of slate where you just want to blindly play 50K level lineups, 49-9 lineups that have like 2+ chalk pieces in it. Because then you're just gonna start slashing your EV like there's no tomorrow when you see that your lineup is duplicated 34 times. Because this is the assessments that I make, right? This is kind of where like these ratings come from. Defik asks, can I elaborate on my fighter scoring system and how you use it to generate your lineups? Essentially, this rating is a weighted version. I'm not going to show you the formula, and I do change it every slate. It takes account the money line of the fighter, the inside the distance probability of the fighter, the round one probability of the fighter, alongside the median projection and a ceiling projection, and then compares it to the ownership. And then you get that rating for that. What the weights are, right? I mean, I also average out multiple projection sources for ownership. I have my own in here. This is just preliminary. I just threw it in because I didn't want to just go by the RG ownership. And then I get these ratings, which basically says to me what fighters are overowned and what fighters are underowned. So like right now, like this is only preliminary. I have fighters that are I have Brito at 58% projected owned and still underowned. Right, based on these ratings, right? I have Petrovic at 19% ownership as a bit underowned. I have Michael Morales at 22%, a bit overowned. I have Gatto at 29%, a bit not bad. Now, Fakhretdinov is a bit overowned. Ferreira at 59%, I actually have as a bit underowned because he's minus 170 at 8,400. But then I got guys like, like Ivanov and Dawson. Like I have Dawson at if he's going to be 27% owned, I have him as decently overowned. I have Ruzaboev as a little bit underowned if he comes in at 14%. If Elvis Oliveira is 11% owned, I have him as overowned. Even at 11%, I have him as overowned. But of course, this is just preliminary right now. I still have to update. I have to update the lines from 2 days ago. I have to aggregate all the ownership, put in the other projection sources. So this may change a little bit, but this is what kind of what it looks like. Like Ferreira, Ferreira, I much prefer Ruzaboev for leverage than Ferreira, but I mean it's hard to ignore a minus 220 fighter with a minus 170 inside the distance line and nearly a coin flip to win in the first round. That could win both by knockout and by ground and pound and with grappling at 8,400. Ferreira could outscore Brito, right, with that ITD line. So saving 1,200 and then allowing you to play so many other different combinations with that $8,400 fighter, it makes it more appealing. But of course, it's not a given. There's a much difference between a 69% win probability on the money line and a 93% win probability on the money line. Defix says you don't think Magomedov will be the highest since it's the only 5-rounder. No, only because people will play Strickland as well. I think Magomedov will be the highest owned underdog. Do I think 60%? No. Because there's going to be still too many people playing strong Strickland as well. So that's why I put him in like the low to mid 40s. Especially on a slate where you don't really like many of the underdogs. I mean, a lot of these underdogs have a 2-to-1 chance to lose. I mean, it's not that close. And you have, the women's fighters who have like limited ceilings. You got Oliveira and Wilson that have like plus 1,000, plus 1,200 inside the distances. You got 3 women's fights that are like 10, 12, 13% ITDs. Right? You don't have much there. Like Max Griffin and Benoit Saint-Denis aren't like people that you're like excited to play. Can they win? Sure, but their ITD lines aren't that great either. So you're left with what? You're left with Kevin Lee's coming off like a long layoff, and although he faced great competition earlier, who knows what he's going to look like. The last time he didn't look well. I mean, he went to like Eagle FC or something. He went to some other promotion, and now he's facing Fakhretdinov, who essentially everyone is trying to duck. Right? He's destroyed his past 2 opponents. There's maybe a step up in competition if it's Kevin Lee that from before. but it's quite possible that he wipes the mat with him also. So it's like, you look down here and you go, well, who the hell am I playing? Even Ivanov against Romanov. Yeah, if Romanov gasses Ivanov, he could finish Romanov, but Ivanov really doesn't do much. This is a slow heavyweight fight. If Ivanov's winning, it's probably plus 315 in a heavyweight fight isn't all that appealing. So it's like, who do you play down here? That's why you take a look, and you see a lot of people will play Magomedov. I think a decent amount will play Kevin Lee. I think not many people are going to play Michael Morales. I mean, he's a young prospect. Probably much better than Max Griffin, but I'm not sure if this line should be that wide, where Morales should be a minus 250 favorite. So like between 9,000 and 7,200. This seems more of the type of fight that would be like 8,600, 7,600, if anything. So I could see people playing Max Griffin. Then you have Petrovic, who is, she's making her debut. I don't think the line should be that wide against Luana Carolina. Yeah, Petrovic is a wrestler. Petrovic has a path to a lot of points. I mean, Luana Carolina has nothing on the mat, but I don't consider Petrovic. I mean, she's like what, 6-0. It's not like she's processed or anything. So a lot of these women's fights could go. Who knows? It's lower level women's MMA. Like Gatto is fairly green. Carol Rosa looked good in the beginning. I mean, in some of her wins, she looks really good on the feet, volume striking. And then in some fights, it's like, what are you doing? Like, just ends up doing nothing. Or gets taken down and controlled for 12 minutes. Even though she can wrestle. So I just think a lot of the field are going to look at a lot of these underdogs and go, ugh. But truthfully, I'm looking at that. I'm looking at the underdogs going, ugh, right? So that's why I'm much more likely. Like, how do I play a dog and not go, ugh? Well, that's why it's like, okay, I'll play Ruzaboev against a 50 to 60% owned Bruno Ferreira. It's like, okay, well, I could take care of that, and then I could still play Magomedov in that lineup, and then I have my underdogs taken care of. Maybe I have to take a shot on one of these people. I just don't feel like I want to take shots on 2 or 3 in the same lineup as much. So that's my thoughts. First look on the UFC Vegas 76 card. Obviously, the Ground and Pound podcast will be coming out today, so you can hear all of Liam and Mike's takes, how they think the fights are going to play out. The expert survey will be coming out. So that's all for RotoGrinders premium members. Ownership and projections will be updated later today as well as tomorrow. And then we'll have the Crunch Time program free, sponsored by FanDuel. So show up 3:30 Eastern tomorrow, me and Mike, leading right up until lock. I'll already have my lineups done. So I'll have all of this filled out and more of what I'm actually doing. And we'll break down some more stuff about strategy then. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit the thumbs up button if you like the free content, right? This is hey, RotoGrinders doesn't do we don't do any free MMA content. It's all behind the paywall. This is the only thing. So if you want this show on Fridays to continue going, you smash the thumbs up, the like button. You hit the subscribe button if you're new, and you hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We got baseball stuff today, right? We got PGA showdown stuff, right? We got stuff. NFL's coming back soon. We'll have some preseason content. We've WNBA projections. You want to play that? We got soccer stuff. We got everything. So click on that link in the description. Get $10 off your first month for RotoGrinders premium subscription, and have a good weekend. I'll be back next week. Send in your questions at theoryofdfs.com, because I'm here to answer them. That's what I do Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern, on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.